Welcome to Milestone Mindset Live. I'm Nancy Sargent, your host, and I'm here with Jane Paterson, a speech and communications coach. And if you've ever had to make a presentation, whether one-on-one or speak on a stage, or just want to improve your communication skills, you'll want to watch every minute and hear what Jane has to say. I'm the founder of Sargent Marketing and the Milestone Marketing Blueprint, and this show, Milestone Mindset Live. We serve nonprofits, small to mid-sized businesses, educators, association directors, and individuals and entrepreneurs who want to advance their careers and their business. So, Jane, I'm going to jump right in. I'm so excited to have this topic with you today. And I would love to have you introduce yourself. And I know on your website, your full title of your company is One Perfect Speech from Fear to Fantastic, right? So let's have you explain how that happens and how you help.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It is a real pleasure to be here today. I am, yes, a public speaking and communications coach. And quite simply, all that means is that I can take everyday speakers and transform them into confident and effective communicators. Now, why does this matter? We need to work on our speaking skills because if you work on your speaking skills, you will feel much more empowered to speak up in situations. I guarantee you will also grow your career. And in addition, you could bring about change and you might even inspire someone. And this is what I do. I've done it for quite a few years and I'm really passionate about it.
I would like you to share then for a moment, since you've mentioned you've been doing this for a while. How did you get to this point in your career that you are helping so many people with this right now?
Okay, this is an interesting story. For many years, I was like one of those children. I was born with confidence. In fact, I think you mentioned as well to me when we were speaking once that you were comfortable being in front of people even from a young age. And I assumed that comfort meant, well, you're a great public speaker because you're not nervous. I have a love of language. So the whole thing seemed natural to me because I loved it. I studied it. I learned a bit more about it, etc. But it was not something that I actually taught. I had a whole different career, but it was always a passion of mine. And I really felt, I could become good at it. But as I say, it was a sideline. And then in 2011, my now adult son was then 15 years of age and was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And as a teenage male, it is a 3.5 to 4 year treatment. So within a day, our lives went off a cliff and I was full-time looking after my son. It was in those halls and passages of the hospital that I realized that everything I had studied and my passion for effective communication really served me well. I was very clear after the initial panic about how I needed to communicate with his doctors, which is critical because they have your child's life in their hands. And it was very clear to me as well that I needed to get a control of my emotions, which was just rampaging fear and panic, and figure out how to move forward with this. And everything is based, as you know, on communication. Every relationship is based on communication. So I noticed that my ability to communicate effectively, to ask questions, to solicit information, to stay on point, not ramble or digress or let my underwhelming emotions completely overwhelm me, I saw how it allowed me to build such a strong relationship with the doctors. And it was that moment, not in the first few days, certainly not even the first few years, but I came to realize this is something I need to share with other people. Don't wait until the spotlight swings on you to practice your speaking skills. Get those skills under your belt because you never know when you're going to need to stand up and advocate for somebody else.
Jane, I actually think you did tell me that very, very early on when we met. But when I just asked you that today, I hadn't actually remembered that story, and that personal experience, but I'm glad I asked that at the top of the show, because the communication is just so powerful and every day. And even though we're here, what may seem like to talk about being on a stage or being behind a camera, it really does boil down to human relationships, interactions, and communication. And I think clear communication would solve a lot of challenges we have in the world. So thank you for sharing that personal story. Let's transition a little bit to just a little bit of a lighter note here. And we've kind of answered this already, but this is a question that you like to ask, but of others, but I'm going to ask you. Are the best public speakers born with the skill, or can it be developed?
Absolutely, it can be developed. Too many people think, and I fell in this category, as I said, that if you were a confident child and became a confident adult and liked having eyes on you, it automatically made you a good speaker. Not at all. Not at all. If you look at the greatest orators, the most inspiring and powerful speakers, the majority of them studied and learned the techniques. Public speaking is a skill, just like playing golf, playing the violin, learning to paint. It is something you can study and that you can become good at if you practice it. The people who seem to have that natural charisma, absolutely, they might have a slight edge because they were a little bit more confident, a little bit more outgoing, but it doesn't make them great communicators. And a lot of the clients I've worked with, the ones who blossom and become the real effective communicators, are the people who didn't walk in oozing charm and charisma and confidence. It was often the person who was slightly more quiet because they really dug deep. They'd never coasted by on their charm and their easy way with words. They'd always had to work at it. So it's absolutely something that if you're not born with it, you can develop it and you become very strong at it and very good at it. The best thing about public speaking that I love, it's quite a quick pickup rate. And the way I mean that is that for decades, I was a writing teacher, an English teacher. Sometimes the growth is very slow in that area. Sometimes there's almost no growth. If the person isn't going to be a great writer, they're not going to be a great writer. But with public speaking, you can learn the tools and tips and the skills, and you can walk out of a session and implement them immediately on your next Zoom call or your next presentation, or even just the next conversation with your spouse. So no, you do not have to be born with public speaking skills. I'm not even sure there are many people who are.
Also, when you were describing that, I was thinking of the person who um, may perceive themselves to be shy or introverted, but I'm thinking if they really have a passion for something that they want to communicate, working with someone like you helps them be of service there. When I became a yoga teacher a few years ago, I never intended to teach anyone. I did that as a progression of my own practice, but I had to teach in order to graduate. And then I took another whole year of it. When I first did my first few classes, I was nervous because there's a whole nother language and I'm there responsible for people. But then about the third one of my instructors, or maybe it was a classmate, said, "Where did that come from?" And I said, "I forgot about myself, or didn't make it about myself. I was thinking about the people in the room that I was serving." And that just changed the whole thing. And so with that and what we're talking about now, we're really here also to help anyone who's listening overcome the fear of public speaking. And again, public is any one audience. So love for you to talk a little bit about ways that someone can overcome that fear if they have it.
Okay. Many clients arrive at my door and state that what's holding them back is fear. The fear of public speaking is holding them back. Okay. And then I'll say to them, but how do you know you're fearful. What do you feel? What's the sensations? And they'll say, well, my heart races and maybe my cheeks get red, or, my palms are slightly sweaty. Yes, that could be signs of fear, but that's really just adrenaline pumping through your body. So the way I get clients to overcome fear is I teach them and I have them do a mind shift. You have to reframe how you perceive this fear. Now, I always tell this old story that where I come from in Cape Town, South Africa, where I lived for many years, the one town I lived in, people would go cage diving with sharks. It's madness, absolute madness. And I had no intention of doing it. And they would all line up in the dark, and I would be down there for my run or whatever. And I'd stop and speak to these people from all over the world and say, aren't you scared to do this? And they'd be like, I'm terrified. I'm absolutely shaking in my boots with fear.
I love
Then
that.
I'd say, well, so why are you doing it? And they would say, because I want that sensation of facing my fears and having done it. Because afterwards, I'm going to walk out and say, I cave dived with sharks. I can do anything. Right. So if we understand and accept as educated adults that your fear is not holding you back, because we do things every single day that make us scared, but it doesn't stop us, does it? I mean, having children in this world can be a fairly terrifying thing, certainly not stopping many of us. So if you understand that the fear is not the thing that's holding you back, you're misinterpreting what your body's doing. So you need to reframe that fear and say, okay, I feel my cheeks getting red. My heart is racing. I have butterflies in my stomach. I have cotton mouth. No, that is your body getting ready for you to do a great job. So you tell yourself, yes, I sense these emotions because I am passionate about my topic and I am eager to share it with my audience. So you have to do that mind shift. If you're going to keep standing up in front of a group of people and saying, I'm fearful, I'm so scared, gosh, my heart is racing, well, you're going to talk yourself into it. But if you can reframe it and work on that, you're the first step there. Then I provide them with a lot of other tips and tools, what people can do in order to calm the racing heart, etc. But a lot of it gets back to having studied it, how to do it, and putting it into practice. Because the more you practice, the lower the stress, the less the fear, the more confident you will become. So it's eminently easy to overcome the fear of the speaking and the nervousness and what people call lack of self-confidence.
And what practice. It's not just piano lessons, or it's anything that you're trying to do.
Yes.
And it is really the only way to become more comfortable of it. So there's overcoming fear, and to me, overcoming fear is being willing to try.
Yes.
And then the practice. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, but you've already given a few of the top tip for improving your speech or presentation. So I'm going to say, let's go a little bit deeper and share a few more tips that, or maybe even some questions that people come to you with, but something else that can help people even today say, I have this conversation I need to have today, and it can be better because of this.
Okay. All the time, whether you're at a dinner party or, someone finds out in a networking group that I'm a public speaking coach, they'll first say, what is the one thing I should do? What is that one golden tip that's going to immediately improve my speech? And there actually is an answer. In my mind, it's all about pacing. And the simple answer is, if you want to improve how you speak, just slow down. Just slow down. Most of us, our default setting is to speak at a fairly fast clip. And depending on your culture and your background, you may find you speak even faster than the average quick speaking American. What happens is if you slow down, you consciously slow down, immediately you allow your listener an opportunity to tune in to you. You assume that the moment you start speaking, people's ears are glued to you. No, they're not. We're all busy, people are distracted, they're preoccupied. We all have a lot going on in our lives. So when we start speaking, even if it's an important conversation, say with a junior member of your staff, your boss, your teenage child, even if it's an important conversation, they might not always be listening to you from the word go. But if you slow down, you give them an opportunity to tune into your wavelength. And if you're like me and you have an accent, it's better to slow down because it allows people to get their ears around the fact that I don't sound like the majority of people around them. That's the first thing. You're giving your listener the gift of tuning into you. The second thing, if you slow down the rate at which you speak, you will almost entirely eradicate those filler words, the ums, the are, you know, sort of, like, any of those. Why do people use those in their conversations? They use them in their conversations and their speech, not because they are lacking vocabulary or not intellectual. They do it because their tongue is running faster than their brain can keep up. So what happens is that you're not downloading the thoughts quick enough for your tongue to speak them. So to buy yourself time, you go, and that lets your brain organize the next thought. So if you want to clear those filler words out, simply slow down the rate at which you speak, because you allow your brain the time to organize that next thought, bring it down, and you can speak it and you sound a lot more fluent. That will improve people's speech. One rider I must add here. Just because I'm saying slow down your rate of speech, I don't mean slow down your rate of speech that you speak like that forever and a day. That will become monotonous and robotic. You must vary the pace at which you speak. So if I'm in a conversation with you over a cup of coffee, I'd probably speak faster than I am now. But anytime you're imparting information, particularly if it's detail dense, you must slow down for the other person to keep pace with you. And we all have living proof of this. Has somebody ever rattled off a telephone number to you or a credit card number and you're like 555-222-11? You're like, what? We simply can't take it in. So if you're conveying information even to your teenage daughter and you're saying, you know, something important to her, that's 3 different steps, go here, meet this person, do that, send this, slow down and let them have time to absorb it. If people did that, it would clear up a lot of the issues with everyday speech. And slowing down lets you enunciate your words more clearly. That means positioning your tongue and your teeth and everything more clearly, which means that people, again, will understand what you're saying. It is the one key thing you can do immediately.
And I'm going to share something that could help you slow down.
Lovely.
And that would be to put your feet on the ground. You could, like, right in here.
Yeah. Nancy, you've frozen.
There we go. We are live and the internet just blinked out for a minute. So I'm going to start that point again.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I will recommend to do to help you slow down. Well, first I will tell you that there's a phrase that was said to me once a long time ago, which was, "You're speaking so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying." And that was, maybe I was emotional, upset, what have you. And it could also mean so quickly that I can't understand what you're saying. But a tip to slow down, very simply, anywhere you are ever, whether it's preparing for a speech or on a supermarket line, but just feel your feet flat on the ground, align your posture a little bit, kind of move your ribs and your shoulders and your upper body out from your hips, whether you're standing or sitting, and take a gentle breath. Feel the breath. And you can take it from your belly on up, but just settle yourself and put yourself in the moment and think about that you're communicating with someone else and you would like to be understood for whatever reason, and you would like to give them the time to do that. But you can do that in 30 seconds, anywhere, anytime. Feel your feet on the ground, touch your hands together, whatever it takes to ground yourself.
Absolutely. All those nonverbal techniques that I work with on my clients are 50% as important. It's half and half. The nonverbal and the verbal go hand in hand, because if you don't understand how to calm your body, as you say, or present confidence, show how you're in control, or you want to be authoritative, if you don't have a handle on all the aspects of nonverbal communication, the verbal's not going to get you the whole way down the road. And by nonverbal communication, if anyone's listening and is interested, it is your eye contact, your facial expressions, your posture, your body language, and your hand gestures. And many of these things you would bring into your technique of learning to communicate effectively. And luckily, with Zoom and all these virtual platforms, a lot of the techniques you can do without anybody seeing you. And that is one of the critical areas that I work on. And you're absolutely right. My thing is feet flat on the floor. It also conveys confidence and authority. And if you want to really show that you're taking up space and you're settled in a business setting, just take your palms and put them either side of your laptop or put them flat on the desk. If that feels weird, you can just press them to the top, not press, but place them to the top of your thighs. Just very gently rest them on the top of your thighs. And if you just bring yourself into alignment like that and breathe, you're going to feel your heart rate come down. So yes, it sounds like there's a lot of lovely synergy between both public speaking and yoga, which I did not know.
Yes. Well, they say what happens on the mat goes with you everywhere. So what you were just saying was also alluding to virtual and in person. And I think it's a good opportunity here to mention a similarity in preparing for both in person and online, and a difference perhaps.
Okay, let's start with the difference. When you're in person, you have the great advantage, this is going to sound crazy, of having your physical energy with you. You're in a room with people, you're bringing yourself into that room. That immediately will add something to how you speak. If you're in person, the people who are listening to you or watching you will either see you head to toe if you're standing in front of a room, or standing in front of a desk or next to a desk or a table, or even if you're sitting, they're going to see you. When we're in person, we can pick up the energy of the other person. We are very attuned to micro facial expressions. And we all know this. You're having a conversation with someone and they ever so slightly raise an eyebrow or the mouth turns down. It can be the tiniest expression and we will pick up on it and get that vibe from them. So when you're in person, it is very important that you bring your techniques together, your verbal and your nonverbal. When you are virtual, you are trying to replace all those benefits that you had when you were in person. And this area is particularly important when I work with people who are doing interview technique. Because prior to COVID, every interview, maybe the first one was on phone, but the rest were in person. People would fly across the countries for interviews, even if it was just an internship, or even if, you're being interviewed, your 16-year-old son's being interviewed to work in the local ice cream shop, you went in person. Now, even at senior levels, a lot of the first round contact is done virtually. Therefore, you need to mimic as close as possible how it would have appeared if you were there in person. So key things people must do whenever you're speaking on a camera, you need to make sure as close as possible that the height of the camera is eye height to you. Because you would never have walked into an interview or a meeting with your team and stood up and looked down at everybody like that. I'm so sorry. Another alarm. Give me a minute here. Apologies. Busy place. You would never have looked down on them like that. You would also not have sat and spoken to your boss while he's hovering over you. You would have stood up. So get your camera at eye height. That is immediately going to create a better situation. Make sure you have a lot of light on your face. That will allow people to see your eyes clearly, which conveys good eye contact, and it will light up your face so that they can see those microfacial expressions I was talking about. Also, when you're speaking to the camera, I forgot to add, look in the camera. Our history and culture tends to dictate that when we're speaking to someone, we look them in the eyes. So theoretically, I would be sitting like this because now I'm looking at you on screen.
See.
But everybody watching, it looks like I'm going downhill. So you need to train yourself that you are looking eye height into your camera, which will create a much better, realistic effect. Always have your sound good, your area around quiet you. And just think, if this was in real life, what would it be like? I'd be sitting across the table from the guy, eye height. She would be able to see all the expressions on my face, etc. One last tip. If you're in a situation where you're having a difficult conversation with somebody, you can see the camera here has cut me off sort of chest level you as well. But if you're having a conversation that's a bit more difficult, you could put your camera lower down on the table and have your hands just gently crossed in front of you. Why? Because a lot of the time, if we see someone's hands, we perceive it as not threatening. You look at witnesses, people giving evidence, hands up, you tend to feel, oh, I know this guy's a good guy. Hands down, what is she hiding? That is a bit literal, but there are all these body language techniques where you can play around with them to create that positive environment so that your message is communicated as effectively as possible.
Jane, we could continue this for quite some time, and I'd love for you to come back again in the future, because this is a topic that everyone can benefit from. And so both of us are at a stage in our careers where we've always been of service in our careers, but we are helping bring coaching and I'm helping bring marketing strategy to nonprofits and small businesses, while I continue to serve some larger entities in a full realm. And you're bringing this to individuals and probably groups as well. And we have contact information scrolling at the bottom of the screen. This is going to become a column on medium.com. We'll have shareable links. We'll be sharing this on all of our socials. You'll be able to find it, and you can contact either one of us with that contact information. So Jane, I even learned and was reminded of a few new things here. And for fun, I will just show also something about when you're online. If we change the picture here, and there's benefits to this larger screen, and then there's benefits to this view.
Yeah.
But I think that what's also important maybe to close out here is there is no one way to do it, and adapt yourself to the situation. Give yourself a moment to be still before you begin anything. Try not to sail into that speaking engagement, that big presentation, that interview, for the job of your dreams with only a moment to spare.
Correct.
Give yourself time to regulate, adjust to the environment. And especially if you're in person, there's for me, a real opportunity to sort of be there before things happen. So Jane, I just again want to thank you so much for joining me here today. And we will share this, and any questions that we have online in the shares and in the live replays, we will answer them. So thank you everyone for listening. I'm Nancy Sargent of Sargent Marketing, and this is Jane Paterson from One Perfect Speech. And we really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Thank you.